Everybody, it's Jeremy. Welcome back to the Slowest Blitz, where we are playing Asphodel. This is turn 21. War with Phaeacia and Man, but not Ulm. So let's see how this rolls out. We made a really big mistake on turn 19 leading into 20. We paid for it on 20. Let's see how we can recover from there. So, first up, we've completed Evocation 2, a little pit stop, popping back into Conjuration 4. We'll talk more about that later. We did a Call of the Wild, first Call of the Wild that we've shot out this game. And then we did a bunch of different summons, some reanimation and Pack of Wolves over in Phaeacia to try to just give us a little bit more siege defense. Neither reanimation nor Pack of Wolves does much in that regard, but we're playing a margin of points. Just a few points could make the difference depending on where Phaeacia moves or if they leave things on Phaeacia, etc., right? So kind of playing that kind of concept there. Plus, the reanimation and Pack of Wolves are still going to be useful for us later. So happy to just have the chaff, right? We also did some Summon Killer Mantis and Revive Whites over in the capital. Revive Whites, perfectly acceptable, I think, a decent kind of concept. Their Chill Aura is not going to be effective against the Knights of Man, but they do have high protection, so they can survive a couple of hits, and they do hit hard enough to potentially kill some Knights of Avalon, not Knights of Man. The Killer Mantises, more questionable. Probably should have spent those gems on actual national summons, but they are stealthy, right? So in theory, we can send them out with a hag and have them kill, just raid around, kill some PD, that type of stuff. We'll see if that is what happens, and if that is what happens, how that goes. So, first Call of the Wild, popping off in Glistening Wood. Let's see how this goes. So, got a bunch of wolves. This is a forest, right? So obviously you want to try to target forests with Call of the Wild because you're going to get half as many wolves if you target a non-forest. So unlike Call of the Wind, where it's pretty much applicable everywhere, with Call of the Wild, you really only want to be utilizing it in forests to maximize its efficiency. Same price, I believe. But, there's the kind of like differentiation of, I think wolves probably a little bit better in combat than the burbs are. But burbs are flying, so they can snipe commanders, so maybe they have a better chance of actually winning against a larger size of PD. But wolves are stealthy, and I think more specifically, werewolves, which you get a werewolf commander, can actually summon allies. So if you get these guys back to safe territory, you can start mass producing wolves, and they cost no upkeep. So that is pretty sense. Let's see how this goes. We are up against a little bit of PD. Looks like 6-ish or so, maybe a little more. And there is actually a monk over here. So, interesting thing about Man, which I do think they are utilizing, they do have these Divine Insight monks, which allowed them to research very small amounts, right? But it adds up. If they have temples all over the place, they get their dominion high enough, because they can only have as many researchers as their dominion in that province. But these guys are super cheap. You can pump them out very quickly, and they're banishers, so why the fuck wouldn't he have a billion of them, right? Put temples in every fucking province, get a little bit of extra oomph out of his research for relatively cheap. They are mundane, so they ignore magic drain. Very cool, I think, mechanic from Man, which I think is probably one of those, there's so many variants is on the skill level of players in Dominions, and I think, you can get a lot of bang for your buck being just a medium experienced player, understanding what it takes to do things and be good and get a win, etc., in Dominions, in the series as a whole. But it's things like this that I think maximize that kind of like, do you fully understand the nation? Do you fully understand what your win conditions on the nation are? And I think utilizing your monks and the divine insights for man is actually one of those ways to really maximize your capabilities. Because these things are, at first glance, to maybe a newer player or a medium experienced player, not super great. But they can really make the fucking difference, especially depending on your matchup, right? Like, I talked about this previously, but man is a bad matchup for Asphodel, and it's not just the Knights of Avalon being extremely good, right? They are, but it's also monks are a good thing for man to be utilizing, and mass-producing banishment against undead is pretty solid. Even though Asphodel has kind of a leg up against other undead nations in that regard, because mannequins have higher magic resistance than many other undead do, but it still matters, right? Like, if you still have an army of monks, it's still going to matter comparatively. Anyways, not very expensive, but if we can get this bastard, it will make me happy. So let's see if we can actually get him. So we've got our wolves coming in. This is a fair amount, and wolves die in droves, but wolves also chew up PD that does not have, like, heavy armor or something like that. What's up, Otis? Are you coming to tap me as soon as I start recording? How typical. How typical, Odie. Alright, so it looks like we won there. Obviously, the could be loads of replay bugs, so what we see might not be what we get. And it actually looks like we did better than what we saw there. So, not only did we seemingly lose fewer wolves in that engagement, I assume they probably routed faster, giving the wolves a better opportunity to actually just kill everyone and not die. But we actually got 2 monks there. There must have been maybe there was another monk on the bottom. Oh no, he was actually in the, okay, right. So he had 2 monks there, and we actually got them both. So 35 gold. They only take 1 commander point, so not really a huge deal. But this is 6 research, 70 gold, and we did get a temple there. Now, temples are pretty cheap for man, only 300 gold, I believe. So not a crazy amount, but when we're thinking about the cost of PD, the monks, the temple, we're looking at, you know, close to 400 gold for the price of 8 gems. And now man has to go, okay, fuck, he's got Call of the Wild. I need to make sure my forests are prepared for this, right? So we'll see how that actually goes. We did some site searching, found nothing, unfortunate. We have a couple battles. So we attacked in Iron Peaks. And this, we were not expecting this to necessarily be much of anything, but we probably should have run this Hierophant back home, kept the satyrs, but we were like, hey, this is a fair amount of satyrs. Maybe they can do something. Boy, if you don't stop grazing my arm. Unfortunately, they walked right into a whole butt ton of fucking knights, so they're not gonna accomplish anything. If for no other reason than our guy just dies immediately. They actually did seem like they were taking on the PD just fine, but those knights are going to chop everyone up. So we lose all the satyrs, we lose the Centaur Hierophant. That is unfortunate. Not a huge deal, but unfortunate. we are attacked in New Coast by Phaeacia, and here's the lovely thing. That's where we consolidated, so this fucking stack from Phaeacia is toast. Oh, you walked into the wrong place. But we get to see some of what they're doing, some Protective Winds, some Body Ethereal. Good to know. Already got a shot off. That's very nice. Heat Fate, Personal Luck. More Body Ethereal. Bunch of Body Ethereal spam. Okay. But that is not going to matter too terribly much when you're being squished and bludgeoned by a shit ton of things. So we lost some chaff, some carrion boars, some horses, some wolves, but we killed. In that we saw that we killed everything, but in reality we actually one of the weavers escaped. But we killed 12 Colossi Light Infantry. That's 200 gold, right? 240 gold. That's not nothing. Colossi Heavy Infantry. So what is 260 gold? Was my quick math bad? I don't know. I'm not good at quick math. Colossi Weavers, another 175 gold, and a turn of recruitment. So each one lost, it matters a lot because that's less power, that's less lightning bolts right now, that's less body ethereal, that's less that's less potential thunder strikes if he gets to that, right? That kind of concept on a battlefield, on a final battlefield with Phaeacia. So excited about that. Happy to have that happy little bump. We also pinged in Sylvania with a scout just to kind of see what's up. And yeah, we can see knights on the wing, knights in the center, knights on the wing. Bunch of monks here. Looks like 8 or so monks. And then I think his prophet is here as well. So 8 monks and then a prophet, and then we're looking at what? 50, 60 Knights of Avalon? So this is not a battle, it's just a ping. 50 Knights of Avalon and 10 monks. Okay. So that matters because 50 Knights of Avalon is not unbeatable for what we have in our capital, potentially. The 10 monks and the prophet complicate things. What complicates things more are the 2 additional monks and the other 12 Knights of Avalon. Because again, we're playing a game of margins in the concept of how much do we lose in a victory, or how close is a defeat? And I feel like we could potentially take 53 Knights of Avalon, 10 monks, and a prophet. But can we take 12 monks, a prophet, and 64 Knights of Avalon? And it really starts to get very dicey as the numbers just get marginally larger, because that's additional banishments. The Knights of Avalon, again, are very difficult to kill. It's one thing if you can get them surrounded, but when they're like this, right? When they're all in a line like this, and they're all, buttressed together, these guys have a crazy amount of attacks coming out. They've got, the lance charge, then they've got the broadsword, alicorn, and hoof. Each of these is enough to kill most mannequins in a single hit, so they can delete entire squares of mannequins. Not the bigger ones, obviously, like the minotaurs or the bears or the elephants. They can't quite do that, but they can delete entire squares of the smaller sized mannequins pretty readily. Not guaranteed, but pretty readily, right? If they're blessed, it should be pretty readily, because these guys are, rocking the strength +3, Blood Surge. Yeah. So that makes things difficult, right? 22 damage Broadsword, 21 damage Alicorn Horn, 20 damage Hoof. These things are going to kill squares of mannequins. 6 attacks, not counting the lance, right? Because the lance is obviously going to pop pretty much whatever it hits. 6 attacks per square is going to delete a square of mannequins, all but guaranteed. So we would need quadruple or more mannequins to try to bog down this many knights. And with the amount of monks that are here, we might need even more than that. So it's a very dicey kind of like call. We'll talk more about it as we look at what we actually have in Asphodel. We have religious misconceptions and falsehoods spreading in the Force of the Lost. We lose some dominion. That's not great. Sylvania has breached this turn, and we can see, interesting, we are under siege in Phaeacia, but we are repairing the walls faster than they are being broken down. So that means Phaeacia has moved. We got a disease cured, and we did some patrolling in New Coast. Let's take a look at what's going on. Again, same as last time, we're going to try to take this on fronts, right? So we'll do the Phaeacian front, we'll do the man front, we'll, and let's actually, I'll try to remember at the end to take a look around the world, because there's a lot of things happening right now. The world has really started to heat up as the last couple turns have gone. So, over in Phaeacia, what is happening? Who's moving? Okay. So, Phaeacian front. He has moved off of the capital. He moved into Pugria. And this tells me the thought process was probably something along the lines of he saw all of the stuff in New Coast and he was like, okay, he's going to attack into Pugria. Let me intercept in Pugria and then cut his retreat in New Coast, right? And see how that goes. But instead of doing that, we just consolidated a bunch of forces in New Coast and then killed the little retreat party. So what we're going to do is we are going to just attack down into Pugria. What we have in New Coast, I think, is more than enough to defeat what Phaeacia has to offer. The question is whether or not we can actually get Phaeacia in battle, okay? We do have group Barkskin rocking now, so that's pretty nice. We've got a little stack down here with our Black Centaurs, and a stack up here with our Minotaur Warriors. Those are what we really care about. So we're doing, group Barkskins. We're also doing a little bit of group Blur. This will not be useful against man, but it will be potentially useful against Phaeacia. So reducing the attack skill of their units. Again, I think more than enough. I think more than enough to beat Phaeacia if we were to fight in an everything they have versus this kind of like situation. If for no other reason than this is a massive amount of Black Centaurs, and we have quite a few Carrion Behemoths as well. So that in and of itself, I think, really does the job. I will say we don't have nearly as much chaff here as I would want to have. Which means that we might take quite a few losses doing something like this, but it necessary. So I don't think the issue is fighting Phaeacia. I think the issue is getting Phaeacia to fight rather than them constantly sailing around and being a nuisance and man coming to their rescue, right? Because we've got a large amount of Knights of Avalon down here. I would assume these two little portions here are probably the majority of their Knights of Avalon. But that doesn't mean that they don't have other forces elsewhere, right? So that is a concern as we get over into this border, that's going to make it way easier for man to come in and be like, okay, well, you're sieging on Vaclez. Here's a stack of 60 fucking unicorns. Deal with it. Because fighting Phaeacia, I think we can do. Fighting man with this stack, I think we can do, though I think we'll take a lot of losses depending on how big the amount he sends. Fighting both of them, I don't really think that's going to work out for us. And if we were to lose this stack in the Phaeacian territory, then that would really fuck us up. Fuck our ability to finish the war with Phaeacia and threaten man from 2 different locations. So we're going to have to be cautious of that, cognizant of it. We're going to move to Pugria, put Vaclez in check. We're also raiding into impassable mountains with Carrion here, right? So he's got a little stack of 5 centaurs. This should work against basically any PD, but if he gets wise or if he's just fucking around and he sends something there or he PD dumps, that could be a big issue, right? Over in Phaeacia, we are continuing to reanimate and summon packs of wolves, again, primarily because these are very cheap things to do, not really affecting our gem deposits that much. And we can use these, right? Like, we can use these as siege chaff. We can use them to raid out. They're still useful situations. We are, however, going to try to hit Phaeacia with a small stack of mannequins. If he moves back onto the capital, this is dead. If this dies, I don't care. It's not a big investment. It's a very tiny investment. If this is just a scout or just a lone unit, like it says, right, just a single heavy cavalry, then it will knock it off, free up Phaeacia, and go from there. And I did want to point this out because it did get asked. I am intentionally not preaching with this Carrion Centaur because I would rather not spread the candles too quickly. Now, I will say, it is death over here, which is kind of interesting that these scales are death scales. So that's a thing. But the death scales, right, is 0.2% population loss. Whereas this is 6.3% population loss per turn. So we wanted the temple so we could recruit mages that are priests, but also so that we could recruit Jade Maidens, right? So we want that, but we don't want to spread our dominion too quickly over in Phaeacia, because Phaeacia's, in theory, is supposed to be our little breadbasket, right? If we can get to the point to where we have Phaeacia lands slowly gaining our dominion and dying, whereas our heartlands are quickly gaining our dominion and dying, then that keeps us with an income for longer, right? So we'll see how that goes. We could even, depending on how things work out, we could even be like, hey, Van, spread your dominion. We won't fight it over here. We won't preach. We won't build additional temples, etc., etc., just to stave off things. But that's a long-term kind of concept where we're like actually done with Phaeacia and winning against man. So might never happen. Anyways, that's the long and short of the Phaeacian. What's the word I'm looking for here? It's early morning. I'm so scatterbrained right now. That's the long and short of the Phaeacian front campaign. There's a different word I'm looking for. Whatever. We move on. Let's go talk about man, shall we? And I think we can't really talk about man without talking about Sylvania. So let's take a look at what we actually have here in Asphodel. We have 600 units in Asphodel. We've got 11 Black Centaurs here, another 9 there, another 10 there. So we have 30 Black Centaurs. We've got 20 Minotaurs. We've got 20-ish Centaur Warriors. So we're looking at, what? A little over 500 mannequins, and then a mixture of other units, counting like the wights and the killer mantises. Oh, we've got 46 centaurs, right? So the centaur archer's not going to do anything. Maybe they'll snipe a monk or two here or there. That could work. So the question is can this stack beat what is at Sylvania? Because, in theory, we can move there, right? We can move there with basically everything. And in the testing that I did, it generally beats the 10 Prophet and the 53 or whatever it is Knights of Avalon there. But it takes heavy losses. When you add in the 2 monks and the 12 knights from Iron Peaks, if they were to come in, it suddenly turns from being normally a win with heavy losses to being a 50-50 with pretty catastrophic losses. And that is the issue that I'm having here, right? The catastrophic losses, even if we win, right? Like a shit ton of dead everything, even if we win. And the issue, watching those tests repeatedly, the issue that we find is that Black Centaurs just can't kill the Knights of Avalon reliably unless they outnumber them significantly. Or if the mannequins have a long enough time period to actually really get some fatigue on the Knights of Avalon, then the Knights of Avalon are easy kills for the Black Centaurs. The issue with that is I need overwhelming numbers of mannequins to actually get that much fatigue on. It's not even a 10-to-1, right? Like it's a absurd amount of mannequins to get that fatigue on the Knights of Avalon, because they butcher them. Every single turn, 2 Knights of Avalon will delete a square or more of mannequins. And the mannequins won't hit the majority of the time, so they need many turns, right? Like these sleep vines, very low attack value. They have to surround and to harass down the knights to be able to get any hits. And even then, it takes a couple hits to actually do the trick. So we need a lot, and we need them to be able to surround them. Fighting on a walled front just means that droves of mannequins die, and then droves of Black Centaurs die. The flip side is in testing, Minotaur Warriors, if they're buffed, do okay, but they still trade probably about 3-to-1 with Knights of Avalon, and we only have 20 here. So this all leads to say the concept of we could try to take this fight, but if we tried to take this fight, we would have to throw everything that we have here in Asphodel at Sylvania, and depending on what he decides to do, it could be a 50-50, right? With how things are currently, and with the fact that it's still very early game, right? We've got sages incoming. We're winning the war against Phaeacia. I am unwilling to take that coin flip. I don't know if I will regret that, but right now I'm unwilling to take that coin flip. So yeah, we'll see how it goes. We're going to give Sylvania up with the concept that we can raid, we can punish, we can take on Phaeacia, we can threaten man from 2 different flanks, from 2 different directions. We can get our research going, and then we can push in on man with better ratios for victory, right, is the concept. So what are we doing in the meantime? We're doing a couple things. We are moving around a lot of people just to pick up mannequins, etc., but there are actual other things going on. So Little raiding party with Perus. Little 5 stack of Black Centaurs. Kind of like the same scenario going on with Carrion. We are actually just attacking into Shade Forest with a bunch of mannequins, right? This is potentially going to get caught. If it gets caught, losing 56 mannequins is not an insubstantial amount. We would not want to do that. If it happens, it happens. One of the things that I'm finding out that is kind of again, the fucking matchup that is so interesting is these Knights of Avalon have forest survival. Forest survival is incredibly useful for us because we have all these forests. We're growing forests, right? And everything we have has forest survival. So normally when people are fighting us, they are going to move slower through our territory and we are going to move faster. And that can make a very big difference. Man does not give a shit. And those Knights of Avalon move so fucking far. They have 24 map move. They are lightning fast. And it's really, really, really interesting to see that kind of like matchup up against us. So we hopefully aren't going to lose this. This territory is dying. We want to hold it for as long as possible while we can still make money off of it. So doing that. We also have 2 little raiding parties coming out of these Centaur Hierophants, leading 10 stacks of Centaur Warriors. These guys are intending to go into man's backline along with the Black Centaurs and start kind of raiding around, right? I think the last little thing that we have going on is another Call of the Wild, and that is in... Oh, right. We're just popping it here in Lovendalen, right? So this is a very short cast, but we're hoping to pop this and then maybe stealth more with the werewolves and see how that goes. We've got a Crone of Avalon over here. These things are very, very interesting. Slow to recruit, very expensive. I considered tossing a... Can I get there, actually? Yeah, I couldn't get there with Call of the Wilds. When I first saw it, I was like, oh, I'll Call of the Wild that, and I will send the stack from Glistening Woods after it. But I can't Call of the Wilds it, so I wasn't sure that would work out. We are going to go over his capital. This is potentially a very bad concept, because while these guys do have stealth, they don't have, like, the highest stealth in existence. They could get patrolled out, but I really want to get into his back line and try to hit some of these fucking temples, make him pay for things, and go from there. That might be a bad idea, though, so we'll see how it goes. I think that's it, really, for this turn. So, let's take a look at research. Conjuration, we're going up to 4. We are going up to 4 for a couple of reasons, but really we're going up to 4 because we want to go up to 5. 5, Howl. I think Howl is going to be a big change for us, game changer. Again, in the tests that I've run, it takes overwhelming numbers of chaff to be able to tie down the Knights of Avalon long enough for our units that can actually kill things to kill them. Howl is an easy addition to that, makes it easier for us to do that, and it actually threatens the backline of the monks while we're trying to accomplish that, and the monks are not an insubstantial problem, right? So Howl, I think, is the route for us to potentially try to take a fight against man. There's a bunch of other stuff that we're going to get along the way that is very useful right now, and then there's a bunch of stuff that will be potentially useful later with our god, etc., etc. Summon Manticores is one of those things. I think this is a potentially very good spell now in Dominion 6. Manticores are quite scary and capable of dealing enough damage, serious damage, to be able to fight something like a Knight of Avalon. They are expensive. You get 3 of them, but I think they're potentially worth it. And unlike a lot of the summons, especially nature summons, they're not undisciplined. So you can actually buff them, get them ramping up, etc., and that's pretty cool. Aside from that, on the way, again, we've talked about the potential usefulness of Nests of Asps. Not necessarily against man, but even against man, they are chaff that will take man time to kill, right? 1 nature gem for 10 units that man has to kill, when all we need is to choke up those Knights of Avalon as long as possible, matters, right? 6 attacks per square, that's a turn and a half of having to swing at snakes. The snakes aren't going to do anything to them, but right now we don't have a lot of other options for our casters. It's something. Vengeful Vines does not exist yet. Ignore that. We're getting close, though. We're getting real close. And then we actually get some other things along the way, right? I should be Dark Knowledging already. I should really be trying to ramp up my death right now. But I'm in such a fight mode, and I'm so focused on the research that we have that I really want to hit particular research targets as quickly as possible, that I'm basically skipping things like Dark Knowledge, which I otherwise would typically go to very quickly, right? Other things, yeah, I don't know that there's a lot of... Obviously, there's a lot of other useful stuff. Light of the Northern Star are going to be useful for us because we have all the Sages. Strength of Gaia going to be useful for us just in general. A couple of other things that are potentially useful for us, but not super useful for us right now in this concept against man, right? Unfortunately, there's so many other like summons that I really think would be cool to explore and mess around with, but because of the bless that man has taken and the overall concept of what the Knights of Avalon have on their base kit makes it really, really challenging to be like, oh, well, yeah, let's go for this summon because this summon will do okay. Basically, the only summons that are going to matter against man are chapping things up or hitting hard enough to kill them. And there's no like tricks in between. There's no like, well, let's hit them with some cold damage. Let's hit them with some fire damage. Nope, they don't give a shit about any of that. Do you create enough bodies to make them take a long time to kill you? Or can you hit hard enough to kill them? Those are the only 2 options that matter. So we'll see how that goes. All right, anyways, this has gone on really long. We're going to take a quick look around the globe at conflicts that have happened. We've got some scouts in the Vanarus Pythium conflict, trying to keep eyes on that to see what we can see, right? Did we actually watch? Oh, sorry. This was the thing that we didn't watch. We didn't watch Bandar Log versus Abysia. So we've got a shit ton of Tiger Riders. And just a little peek. So we've got scouts on the Pythium Vanarus conflict. Pythium is kind of getting stomped. I don't know if they had really bad expansion or if they just got really unlucky. You can see there they've done the Pythium strategy of, oh, I'm dying, let's get a billion gladiators to make it super painful when you come to kill me. We'll try to keep an eye on that and see if we can catch that, but it looks like Vanarus is definitely going to win their war against Pythium. Bandar Log, who we know was fighting Nabaa, was fighting Agartha, and is fighting Abysia. I think at this point Nabaa is out of the war. I don't know the particulars of that, but I think they're out of the war. But Bandar Log is still fighting Agartha and Abysia. And honestly, this is maybe kind of like the crappy part of how the underground works. But really, the only option for... This is Agartha, right? This is Abysia. The only option for Agartha was fight Abysia or fight Bandar Log. And apparently the matchup with Abysia was real bad. Abysia took a very intense bless. Do we know his bless? No, we do not know his bless. He took an Awake Expander, took a very intense bless, very bad matchup, and, you know, was basically like, hey, go against Bandar Log, because that's what you should do, and I'll go against Bandar Log. And then we'll own the caves and be able to branch out onto the open world, and we won't have to fight each other. So Bandar Log and kind of Nabah, I suppose, right? Like Nabah is over here, but Nabah has not had to fight them. I guess kind of like joined in, but I don't know the parameters of that yet. So Bandar Log is rolling around with a massive stack, doing well fighting against Agartha. We saw Agartha's little stack get squished, and Abysia, but fighting 2v1 is tough, so especially when the fuckers are right underneath you. It's like, it's one thing when it's like, here is the front that I'm fighting man on. Here is the front that I'm fighting Abysia on. Bandar Log is, the motherfuckers are under me. The front is everywhere. What? I guess technically you could be like, the front is these 2 provinces and then these 3 provinces. But yeah, anyways. So there's that going on. And over here in this particular area, we're going to talk about this last. We've got Jotunheim over here and we've got Pyrene over here. I don't know if they are at war yet, but I have heard overtures of war between Pyrene, Pyrene, and Jotunheim. So we'll see how that actually happens. Or if it actually happens, right? And then we have Ulm. We're going to talk about this very briefly. It's turn 21. Turn 19, we did a bunch of diplomacy with Ulm. And I haven't discussed this much. I think I've hinted at it. But the hope is that this isn't going to be a 2v1 for very long. This is going to be a kill Phaeacia and then 2v1. That is the desire, because I don't have great tools to kill man. Ulm does. Ulm has perfectly acceptable tools to kill man. These fuckers hit hard enough. Crossbows will punch through the armor. These fuckers hit hard enough and are so mass producible, right? Like, Ulm has exactly what I don't have. Cheap, mass producible ways to trade effectively with man's Knights of Avalon. And if that would work, if we were to do that, right, then it would be me taking Phaeacia, right? Ulm taking man, and me taking back my ancestral lands, right? And I would be perfectly happy with that. In fact, I love having an Ulmish ally in EA or in MA, because Ulmish allies in MA are great for trading, because you can be like, hey, can you make me X? I will pay you. And they're normally like, yeah, that's what we do. Let's go, right? So I don't know how that's going to resolve. The discussions that we have been promising. Obviously, we were able to diplo Ulm out of the war, and the concept behind that is look, fighting man is going to be far more beneficial to you than it is to me. But we'll see how that actually resolves, right? So, all right, this video has gone long. It's 45 minutes. Covered a lot of ground, though. I think we're in a very interesting game state at this particular moment. And I'm really excited to see where it goes from here. So, that's going to be it for this episode. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye, everybody. Hey, everybody. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, consider leaving a like, commenting, or subscribing. It really helps me out. If you'd like to see me live, head over to my Twitch at twitch.tv/thedistanthorizon.